Picture a man who saves his entire country from being wiped off the map. He outthinks a much larger enemy, drags his own government into a plan almost nobody believed in, and comes home a hero. His city survives because of him. A few years later, that same city votes to send him away. No crime, no trial, no accusation read aloud in front of a crowd, just enough of his neighbors deciding on a piece of broken pottery that he needed to go. That's not a broken system misfiring. That's the system working exactly as designed. And once you understand why, you'll start noticing the same instinct in places that have never heard of ancient Greece. Athens called it ostracism, and it's stranger than the word suggests. Once a year, citizens could vote to remove someone from public life for 10 years. No crime required, no trial, no seizure of property. The person kept their money, their family, their citizenship. They just couldn't be in the city for a decade. And the people who actually got ostracized weren't failures. Themistocles, the man who helped save Athens at sea, was ostracized. So was Aristides, a politician known for being scrupulously fair, some of the most capable people the city had. So what exactly were the Athenians voting against? There was no scandal, no failure on record. Doing spectacularly well at public life seems to have been the risk factor on its own. A city doesn't normally get rid of the people keeping it alive, so why would success itself trigger punishment instead of reward? It would be easy to write this off as one strange Greek custom, a quirk of an early democracy still figuring out majority rule. Except the same instinct shows up somewhere that shares nothing with Athens. No Senate, no pottery ballots, no city walls at all. Anthropologists who've spent time with the Kung, a hunter-gatherer people of the Kalahari, noticed something that looks almost like a practical joke. When a hunter comes home having killed a large animal, enough meat to feed the whole camp for days, he isn't praised. He's mocked. Someone will look at the kill and say it's barely worth the walk home. You'd expect the opposite. A society that depends completely on people being good at hunting should be celebrating its best hunter, not humiliating him. But the ridicule isn't an accident. It's deliberate. The entire point is to stop him from feeling proud of what he just did. Sit with that for a second. A hunting band, entirely reliant on hunting skill, has built a ritual specifically to stop its best hunters from feeling good about being the best. That's the same shape as Athens, just with none of the machinery. No vote, no pottery, just teasing around a fire, aimed at whoever did the most impressive thing that week. Two societies with almost nothing else in common, one running an early democracy, one running a small band with no written language at all, arrived at versions of the same behavior on their own. Neither one seems to be improvising. Something underneath both of them is running the same calculation. That calculation has a name. Researchers call it a reverse dominance hierarchy. And once you understand the mechanism, both Athens and the Kalahari stop looking like isolated customs and start looking like the same defense system, running twice. Think about what happens when one person becomes extraordinarily good at something the whole group needs. A hunter who consistently brings down the biggest kills, a general who consistently wins the wars. The group starts depending on that person specifically, and dependence isn't a neutral thing to hand someone. It's the raw material of power. The better someone gets at what the group can't live without, the closer they drift toward becoming someone the group can no longer afford to disagree with. That's the danger actually being managed here. A person quietly turning into someone the group can't say no to. Ostracism and the Kung's mockery are different tools built for the same maintenance job, cutting the cord before dependence hardens into control. Athens, in effect, was disarming success before it could turn into a monopoly on power. But solving that mystery opens a much bigger one. If concentrated talent is genuinely this threatening to a group, and humans developed instincts tuned to sniff it out and neutralize it, how did any exceptional individual ever survive long enough for history to remember them at all? Before we chase that down, if a Kalahari hunting band and a Greek city-state independently evolved the same defense mechanism, the next question is whether it's old enough to have shaped human evolution itself, whether this same instinct helped decide which humans survived to have kids and which didn't. That's one of the stranger threads in this whole video. So if you like following an idea all the way down to its roots, this is a good point to subscribe before it gets weirder. If this behavior is old enough to show up independently in a Kalahari camp and a Greek assembly, the next question moves out of culture and into biology. Harvard primatologist Richard Wrangham has an answer for it, though it's genuinely disputed among anthropologists. Treat this as a live debate, not settled fact. He calls it the self-domestication hypothesis. The rough idea: once early humans developed language, they gained something no other primate had quite to the same degree: the ability to talk, plan, and coordinate against a single dominant individual. In most primate groups, the biggest and most aggressive male tends to win. Language changed that math. A coalition of ordinary group members, talking it through and agreeing in advance, could now take down an alpha that none of them could beat alone. According to the hypothesis, That shift changed who survived and reproduced over a very long timeline. Bullying, dominant individuals kept getting removed by coalitions before they could pass those traits on as often, while cooperative ones had better odds. Slowly, across many generations, humans may have selected themselves toward more cooperative temperaments, simply because groups kept quietly removing anyone who refused to share power. That's a big claim, and it isn't settled. Other researchers offer different explanations for why humans became more cooperative over time, and there's real disagreement about how much weight this specific mechanism deserves. If Wrangham is right, though, prehistoric humans may have been doing an earlier, far deadlier version of the same thing, consistently enough to leave fingerprints in our biology. Put plainly, Athens and the Kung were solving the same problem, just with different tools. And if Wrangham is right, evolution had already been solving it for a lot longer, keeping domination from ever taking hold in the first place. But that leaves something unresolved. Did we carry a genuinely useful Stone Age alarm system into a world it was never built for? A reflex that protects a hunting band of a few dozen people doesn't automatically stay protective once it's scaled up to a company, a platform, or an entire economy. What kept a tribe alive can just as easily strangle an institution. Rome ran its own version of this long before any of that. In certain periods, the Senate didn't just exile men who'd grown dangerously powerful. It erased them. Their names were chiseled off monuments, their portraits destroyed, their existence scrubbed from the official record, as if they'd never held power at all. Different tool, again, same instinct. Make concentrated influence disappear before it can calcify into permanent control. You can see the same reflex today, just wearing different clothes. In offices, it's called tall poppy syndrome. The person who consistently outperforms everyone else quietly becomes the one everyone resents, not the one everyone celebrates. Online, it's a pile-on, aimed at whoever's influence has started to feel unaccountable. And in economics, it's an entire body of law, antitrust, built for the sole purpose of stepping in once a company gets too dominant for competitors to challenge. None of these are literally ostracism. Nobody's handing out broken pottery in a boardroom. But strip away the centuries and the technology, and the discomfort underneath is identical. Say pays, institutions get uneasy when one person, or one company, accumulates more influence than the group feels it can safely contain. This instinct doesn't come with a reliable off switch, though. Sometimes cutting a dominant figure down to size really does protect everyone else. Other times, it just destroys someone who was doing real good, punished for the crime of being too effective at their job. Even ostracism itself, the supposedly clean original version of this idea, turns out to be murkier than it looks. In the 1930s, archaeologists digging near the Athenian agora found a deposit of roughly 190 ostraka, all pre-inscribed with Themistocles' name, all written in only about a dozen different hands. One reading of that evidence is that they weren't scratched individually in a moment of genuine conviction, that they were prepared in bulk and handed out. An organized campaign, dressed up as a spontaneous vote. It's not the only reading, but it's a compelling one, and it points at a real fault line historians still argue over. Was ostracism really a behavioral instinct protecting the city from tyranny, or was it just ordinary political greed? Rivals using the fear of concentrated power to clear their competition off the board and call it civic virtue. So even the founding example of this whole pattern isn't as pure as it first looked. That brings the real tension into focus, though. Exceptional individuals keep existing, generation after generation, precisely because they create enormous value nobody wants to lose. The same qualities that make someone worth keeping around are exactly the ones that make them start to look dangerous. One honest question is left standing where all the others used to be. How do you actually tell the difference between a group protecting itself from a future tyrant and a group simply cutting down its tallest poppy out of discomfort? That question doesn't have a clean answer buried anywhere in the historical record. What the record does show is how many different eras kept running headfirst into it. Because once you line everything up, the examples stop looking like separate stories and start looking like one story told several different ways. Athens voting a war hero into exile. A hunter-gatherer camp mocking its best provider. Rome erasing the names and memory of men who'd grown too powerful, as if they'd never existed. A modern office freezing out its highest performer. A crowd online turning on someone the moment their reach starts to feel too large to challenge. Different tools, different centuries. Same calculation underneath all of it. Groups fear dependence more than they admire excellence. The target was never talent. It was leverage, the moment someone becomes too load-bearing to say no to. One more thing before the ending. This isn't a one-off pattern. It's one instinct out of a whole set of quiet, unspoken rules still running underneath modern behavior. And pulling those apart is the entire reason this channel exists. If tracing an idea back to where it actually comes from is your kind of thing, subscribing means you catch the next one before it disappears into the feed. So does this instinct still protect us? Or does it hold us back now? Honestly, both. And that's exactly why the argument over ostracism, tall poppy culture, and every modern equivalent never really settles. The line between necessary restraint and destructive leveling isn't fixed. It moves, depending on who's asking and what they stand to lose. So go back to that man who saved his city and got exiled for it anyway. Athens was running old software that day, a survival instinct built to treat overwhelming influence as a preview of future domination, whether or not that domination was ever actually coming. That instinct didn't stay in the ancient world. It's the same discomfort a company feels watching a competitor pull too far ahead, the same reflex a crowd online reaches for the moment someone's influence starts to feel unaccountable. Different centuries, same nervous system. The real conflict here was never simply success against envy, however easy that story is to tell. What's actually running underneath is excellence against the fear of dependence, wanting someone capable enough to rely on, while being unsettled by exactly how much you now rely on them. So the next time you watch a group turn on its most capable member, it's worth asking which one you're actually looking at. A society defending itself against a tyrant that hasn't arrived yet, or the same ancient alarm going off simply out of habit. And most of the time, there's no clean way to tell which.